To study the life of Jesus, you need to have some knowledge of the geopolitical situation in which his life unfolded. The Christian calendar, as introduced by Pope John I in the year 525, has an error of 6 years. Jesus was born in 7 BC, and this type of calendar does not work with a year 0. There is a year 1 BC, followed by a year 1 AD. Jesus was born in the Roman Empire. The Roman Republic had recently ceased to exist. In the year 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated, and what followed was a long civil war. This power struggle continued until the year 27 BC, and eventually Augustus emerged as the winner. The state system was transformed, and so he became the first Roman emperor. Augustus died in 14 AD and was succeeded by Emperor Tiberius. In terms of land area and peoples under his control, the empire was at its peak at that time. The northern tribes were not yet a threat, and there was a balance of power with the Persian Empire, which at that time was ruled by the Parthians. In the year 63 BC, Jerusalem had been taken by the Roman general Pompey, and the region Judea became as a vassal tied to the Roman Empire. In the year 40 BC, however, Jerusalem was taken by the Parthians, after which the countryside of Judea and Galilee were in danger of falling into lawlessness. But the order was restored by a young nobleman, Herod. He received support from the Romans, and in the year 37 BC, Herod succeeded in recapturing Jerusalem. In gratitude, Herod was proclaimed king by the Roman Senate over Judea, Galilee, Perea, Idumea, and a large area northeast of the Sea of Galilee. Herod the Great died in the year 4 BC, and his kingdom, after internal unrest and years of fratricidal strife, was finally divided into 4 territories by the emperor in Rome. 3 sons and a sister of Herod thus inherited their own little kingdoms. They received from Emperor Augustus the lower king title of Tetrarch. His eldest son Herod Archelaus ruled Judea, Samaria, and Idumea until 6 AD, when, after a political lobby, he was deposed by Emperor Augustus. From then on, his territories were incorporated into the Roman Empire as a province. The chief administrator in this province was the procurator. At the time of Jesus' public ministry, this was Pontius Pilate. Herod's sister Salome, according to the latest version of his will, inherited a coastal strip and a small area north of Jericho. When she died in 10 AD, her territories were included in the province of Judea. Herod Philip inherited a large area northeast of the Sea of Galilee. He was a mild and able administrator who ruled for 37 years. After his death, his kingdom passed into the hands of Herod Agrippa I, a grandson of Herod the Great, who later, after mean lobbying in Rome, added also the territories of his uncle Antipas and the province Judea to his kingdom. About Agrippa I, is said in the Bible that he killed the Apostle James. You should not confuse him with his son Agrippa II, who was a lot more friendly to Christianity and offered Paul protection. Herod Antipas inherited Galilee and Perea. In Galilee, Jesus grew up, and in Perea, he spent much of his public ministry. Antipas was a cruel ruler who saw religion as a threat to power. He beheaded John the Baptist, and he gave several times permission to the Judean-based Sanhedrin to arrest Jesus in Galilee. Incidentally, this was politically motivated. For example, he once signed a decree for the arrest of Jesus in Galilee while letting known that Jesus was safe in Perea. In the year 39, Antipas was discredited by his cousin Agrippa I in Rome. The new emperor Caligula took away his throne, after which he eventually died in exile. In Samaria lived a tribe who were related to the Hebrews. When the vast majority of the Jews had been taken away by the Assyrians in 722 BC, a small portion remained behind and soon mixed with other peoples. Their descendants were the Samaritans. Their religion was closely related to Judaism, but they had lived at odds with each other for centuries. The Decapolis was an area which in those days belonged to a 10-city alliance. These were mainly Greek cities. One of the cities was Scythopolis, today's Beth-shean, which is only 20 kilometers as the crow flies from Nazareth. It was more or less a free state. The jurisdiction Syro-Phoenicia in those days was sandwiched between Galilee, Syria, and the Mediterranean Sea. Its main cities were Tyre and Sidon. Jesus took advantage of this fragmented geopolitical landscape on several occasions by diverting to another jurisdiction when an arrest was imminent. Judea and Galilee were predominantly Jewish, but in Perea and the Decapolis, Hebrews were outnumbered. The strong binding factor in the Hebrew identity was their religion, which in those days was kept alive by traditions. They had their own court, the Sanhedrin, which, however, was subordinate to Roman law. The religious heritage that the Jews carried with them gave them identity, but it was also regularly the source of power for emerging resistance. The Jewish collective spirit considered itself the God-chosen people, and it was unbearable to them that they had been subjugated for hundreds of years by other peoples. During Jesus' time on earth, this sentiment flared up again. The Jews who were willing to take up arms were called the Zealots. This explained why Herod and the Roman rulers were so suspicious. From their point of view, the undercurrent of Jewish nationalism posed a substantial danger to their position of power. Relatively shortly after Jesus left the earth, a great Jewish revolt broke out in the year 66. The Zealots then managed to defeat the Romans, driving them out of their holy land. But this was only for a short period of time. 3 years later, the Romans returned with a great force that caused death and destruction in Galilee and Judea. Jerusalem, where the Jewish leaders were entrenched, was surrounded and starved for 6 months. When Jerusalem finally fell in the year 70, it was completely destroyed, and this marked for the Jews the final end of their political autonomy.